Hello and welcome to this webinar on the West Sussex Mental Health Support Team's Whole School Wellbeing Reflective Tool. This webinar will act as a user's guide. My name is Vic Machin and I am the advisory teacher for the South team in Thoughtful. For this webinar, it would be really helpful, I think, if you had the reflective tool already open in another window on your computer. So the aims of this webinar are to understand the context behind the reflective tool, to be able to use the reflective tool, and to gain an understanding of how the MHST Thoughtful can support your use of the reflective tool within your school. So the tool is designed to help and support you with your whole school approach to emotional well-being and mental health. It looks at each of the 8 principles of a whole school approach and asks questions about each area. By completing the questions, you should be able to identify what's working well within your whole school approach and any areas you would like to develop. The 8 principles of whole school wellbeing were identified by Public Health England in 2015 when they published their guidance promoting children's and young people's mental health and wellbeing, a whole school and college approach. The 8 areas are leadership and management, curriculum teaching and learning, enabling student voice, staff development, identifying need and monitoring impact, working with parents and carers, targeted support, and ethos and environment. For each of the 8 areas, the reflective tool has 4 straightforward questions for you to answer. But before you start to delve into the tool, it will be worth having a discussion about who within your school will be filling it in. The natural person who springs to mind is the mental health lead themselves. However, in the pilot stage of the reflective tool, it emerged that the SMHL alone is not able to give the true picture of the school's wellbeing provision. This is because there are things which they are aware of, which but perhaps is not shared across the whole school community. The SMHL should absolutely take ownership of the tool and the resulting action plan. However, getting other people on board is also crucial to getting a true 360 picture of the existing wellbeing provision. This is often done in a small group of staff representing the full cohort of your staff members. However, if you wanted to get a wider picture of the views of the school community, we also have a staff questionnaire available for your use. Could we have a think now? Perhaps pause the video and think about who you might consider inviting to be part of the team who actually fills in the reflective tool along with you. Who would be useful? Who would be representative of different staff groups within your school? I would suggest that possibly a good number of people for this exercise, probably around 3 to 5, maybe up to 6. So when you've had a think, maybe just jot down the people that you think you might approach to help you to fill in the reflective tool. It's also worth bearing in mind that we have pupil versions of the tool also available, which allow groups of pupils the opportunity to really think deeply about the wellbeing provision at school and share their opinions. These pupil versions of the tool are designed to be used by groups of pupils. So if you have mental health ambassadors, this would be an excellent project for them. Or alternatively, you might want to consider giving it to your school council or other pupil voice group to complete. For schools who would like more support in using the pupil-led tool, there is also the opportunity for our voice and participation workers to come into school and lead sessions with your pupils to guide them through the process of using the tool. These sessions can be interactive and fun and will help the children and young people to really dig deep and truly consider their experiences of the mental health and wellbeing provision at your school. So now looking at the tool itself. Its main iteration comes in the form of an Excel document. However, there are also printable paper versions which can be printed off to aid sharing and collective discussion. These can be found at the back of the accompanying guidance booklet. When you open the document, you will find that the main section consists of the statements themselves, and for each of the 8 areas we have developed 4 core statements. These 4 core statements are designed to get to the core of each area, and you would score your provision for each question according to the 5-scale traffic light system. This will then give you an overall score for each of the 8 areas. So for example, in the area of leadership and management, we have these 4 statements, each of which would give your school a score out of 5. So if we look very briefly at the first question that comes up, this question is, we have a named senior mental health lead in the school who is well supported to initiate change at SLT level and whose role is given appropriate protected time and status. So having considered this statement, you would then need to make a judgment based on the 5-point traffic light system. So for this particular question, if you didn't have a named senior mental health lead and you haven't started to think about that role, you would likely mark your current status as red, activity not yet started, which you would put in a score of 1. If you had perhaps written a job description for the role but had not yet appointed someone within the school to carry it out, then you might mark your school with a score of 2, which would come up as orange. If maybe you had appointed a senior mental health lead and they were just beginning to develop their role, you might decide you are currently at a 3, yellow. If on the other hand you had an SMHL but perhaps their role isn't quite what it could be, or perhaps they are not yet able to input into school policy, or you've not yet been able to ensure they have enough protected time to carry out their role, you may choose to grade yourself at light green 4. Or if you have an SMHL who is working efficiently within their role and is able to feed into school policy, as well as have a visible profile around the school and is embedding good practice, you might probably give yourself a grade 5, dark green. Have a quick think now about where you would place your school currently on the scale for this first statement. As you're thinking, you might actually, if you've got the tool open on your laptop or computer, you might want to actually fill it in. For some questions, it may be quite straightforward to use the scale and grade your current provision. However, and this will vary from school to school, for other questions you may not be able to make the decision quite as easily, and for these questions you may want to take a look at the supporting questions. The supporting questions can be found in the additional guidance booklet, and they could be helpful for when perhaps you can't quite agree on what scale to grade your provision at. So looking at that initial statement again, we have a named senior mental health lead in the school who is well supported to initiate change at SLT level and whose role is given appropriate protected time and status. The set of supporting questions to provoke further discussion are: is the SMHL a member of SLT? If not, do they have the opportunity to attend SLT sessions and input into them? Does the SMHL have dedicated time to carry out the role? Is everyone in school aware of who your SMHL is, including staff, pupils and parents? Has your SMHL had CPD to allow them to develop their role? Is the SMHL able to access supervision? Is the SMHL aware of resources to support a whole school approach to emotional wellbeing and mental health, e.g. from Mentally Healthy Schools, Anna Freud, the Charlie Waller Trust, etc.? And is the SMHL aware of local and national services and quality resources to support emotional wellbeing and mental health? It's hoped that by discussing these optional questions you should be able to give a more informed score to the main question. It is worth remembering though that these additional questions are not definitive and they are not supposed to be prescriptive. They were added as an extra layer for those who would like a bit more guidance and are designed to provoke thought and discussion. Okay, so once you have filled in a score for each of the 4 statements in any particular area, an overall score for that area would be generated. So in the example here, for the area of leadership and management, this school has scored an overall 4, light green. And once you have scored each of the 4 statements in each of the 8 areas, you will then get an overview which looks like this, giving you a very quick visual representation of where the strengths lie in your wellbeing provision, so for this school in leadership and management, And where might be your priorities for development, in this case, audit and monitoring. The same information is also shown on the spreadsheet in spidergram form. So again, you can see here that leadership and management area is where the school is doing well. And the audit and monitoring has been identified as the area where they may want to prioritise their starting point for their action plan. So after you have explored your overall scoring, you'll be ready to start to put your action plan together, perhaps starting with the areas of greatest need. At this point, we are more than happy to support you by coming in to discuss your overview and help you to identify key areas for development and put together some steps. Of course, our involvement is not mandatory, but meeting with us to discuss your action plan may be useful, as we may be able to identify areas where we can provide training, support, or advice. The information from filling out the tool can also be really helpful when we have termly planning meetings with you. So I'll now invite you to spend some time looking through the tool. If you do come across any questions, please do contact us at the usual thoughtful email address. Before finishing today, I would just like to draw your attention to the fact that at the end of the tool, we have also included any linked Ofsted criteria which can be addressed by using the tool. The criteria has been updated for the Ofsted guidance for September 2021, so we hope that it will be a useful addendum to the tool. In terms of next steps, we are now inviting all of our MHST schools to use the tool free of charge. We ask you to take it back to schools and use it as a living document in any way you see fit. Have a go at giving it an initial try. The pilot group said that the initial filling in of the document took them around 2 hours and provided them with a very quick overview of their revision. Share your findings with other members of your school community and invite them to engage with the tool alongside you. From there, you should get your school's diagnosis, so the spidergram and overall scores, from which point you can either arrange for us to come in and discuss your next steps in your action plan, or you could go ahead and action plan yourselves. One resource that we would recommend when it comes to planning a whole school approach is the Mentally Healthy Schools workbook. This book by Pookie Knight-Smith is an excellent support guide to creating an action plan around whole school wellbeing and has some fantastic suggestions as to things that you can implement to support your work in any of the 8 areas of whole school wellbeing. Thank you very much for watching this webinar, and we hope you find the reflective tool useful in your schools. Thank you. Bye-bye.